I would put music and some audio cues in this intro, but I don't have any. Sorry. Nope. I still don't have an anime review in me. No matter how much I think about it, no matter how many WordPad files I create and title, no matter how much I think about any anime or another, I still can't cultivate a new review of them darn Chinese cartoons like Cory in the House and... Or, you know what, I'm not gonna go all the way with that joke. It's weird how this can be the case, considering I actually have a number of anime titles I could review. I did a pseudo-marathon of The Lost Village, and oh good lord, what a fucking mess that was. I've begun to finish, if not finish, the spring shows I actively watched. I've considered marathoning the Hellsing Ultimate OVAs. I haven't seen those in a long time. And there's just more material I could make a review out of, but haven't. Because of depression, of all things. Yeah, I haven't been in the anime reviewing mood this year, but I have been playing those video games! Ah yes, video games! One of humanity's best friends when you're just so goddamn under the weather as to be a husk of negative, judgment-clouding, near indescribable emotions. From my favorite video game in the form of the original Deus Ex, to the most blandest of mediocrity, though I can't buy all the video games out there. In fact, the only game I've bought this year was the previously reviewed Doom Reboot, a review that could have been more polished and shortened when viewing it in hindsight. Games are something I've been enjoying more than watching actual anime like I should be doing, if I'm being honest. For 2016, I thought Doom would be the only game I would play aside from the new Deus Ex game that's coming out later this year that I'm anticipating like mad. But as it turned out, another game would catch my attention. An indie game called VA-11 Hall A, or Valhalla as it's supposed to be pronounced, a visual novel that Kotaku describes as a must-buy for fans of interactive fiction, stylized retro games, cyberpunk, and girls with cat ears. Cat ears, huh? Of course I'll have to play it! And thanks to the generosity of one person, I did just that. Thanks goes to Michael of CYANIDE Blizzard for gifting Valhalla at a time where I couldn't even participate in this year's Steam summer sale. His channel can be found in the description below. Thank you, Michael of CYANIDE Blizzard, for the gift, because as it turns out, the gift you gave has not only managed to be a refreshing break from all the hardcore Doom action, it's probably gonna end up as my indie darling of the entire year. I want to avoid spoilers as much as I can, so here we go. Valhalla, Cyberpunk Bartender Action, is an interactive cyberpunk visual novel bartending simulation game set in the post-dystopian tax haven hellhole of Glitch City, where prices are inflated to the point where cup ramen is $60, corporations have more power than the government, nanomachines are a way of life, technology has allowed sentient androids and literal talking brains in jars to exist, and where in one way or another, nothing seems to be safe or just, and its citizens can't help but look for some way out, and not all of them do. Oh, but that's not the story of this game. It would be for another game, but instead, we have Jill, a 27-year-old woman with a cat, an apartment that she must pay bills for, and works at the titular dive bar, Valhalla, a place where patrons are quick to note that it smells like piss. She has a young-looking boss named Dana that she admires, who has a mechanical arm that she won't explain the history of, a co-worker named Gillian who sports a mysterious past that's implied but never outright explained, and Jill's job is simple. People ask for specific drinks, Jill mixes drinks and gives them those drinks, those people drink them, talk for a bit, and leave. You'd think a cyberpunk game where mixing drinks, earning money, and paying bills would lead to some form of straightforward experience, and it is, for the most part. It's a bartending game. You just drag and drop the ingredients, mix or blend them, serve the result, and wow, the mechanics are so riveting and in-depth, you'll never be able to master it. Terrible sarcasm aside, Valhalla could have stopped here, but as previously mentioned, this game is a visual novel first and foremost, and one of the biggest surprises to come from it is just how engaged I was by the story on offer, even if I have my gripes. Imagine for a moment that you were playing Deus Ex, with its bleak world of grit and corruption where mysterious plague is killing the people, and government power is controlled by an unknown faction. Conspiracy fills the air, and questions about the purpose of government, the state of the human condition, the fate of the world, and those who should or shouldn't be running it are all put on the table? What if instead of playing as JC Denton with his nano augmentations, baggy coat, sunglasses that he wears at night for no particular reason other than his vision is augmented, and ability to shout, "A bomb!" with little to no emotional weight as he peels back more and more of the conspiracy, you instead play as the bartender, who he may or may not interact with?
Perhaps certain qualities are an inseparable part of human nature.
The mark of the educated man is the suppression of these qualities in favour of better ones. The same is true of civilization.
I'll get a drink later.
That is essentially how Valhalla frames itself. You're not a character who is actively fighting with or against the system that oppresses the world at large. You're a character who is a part of said world and thus have a viewpoint that is more grounded and mundane than plenty of other cyberpunk stories. You're not a hacker, you're not a corporate person, you're not a superhuman spec ops agent or a bounty hunter. You're a bartender, which would be boring if the game didn't provide you with anything more than, you're a bartender, make those drinks. But with a creative decision that seems like a no-brainer after playing it, it proves to be an effective and, indeed, an ingenious way to frame a visual novel. The gameplay of Valhalla involves you, the player, getting someone's order and looking at a recipe book for drink combinations. Once you get the correct one, you click and drag one of 5 different ingredients to the mixer in the middle of the interface in whatever combination the book tells you, while also adding ice or aging the drink if need be, and you either mix the drink or blend it accordingly. Sometimes orders are straightforward, others have you making bigger versions of said drinks by doubling the amount of ingredients, and other times, certain characters will throw a curveball with their orders or give an order that tests whether or not you've been paying attention to what's been established previously. The game's way of testing player knowledge of the drinks and patrons themselves. Not only that, but the game also tracks how much money you get throughout your playthrough. If you get an order right, you get money for that drink as well as tips, but if you get it wrong, the game will continue, but you get no money from it, affecting your payout at the end of each workday, which does count because in each of the 3 chapters, Jill has bills to pay, which does affect the ending you get. But to add even more complications, Jill can even get distracted at her job unless you buy specific items that she may want before work, and if you don't buy whatever the game says she wants, she'll fail to remember drink orders, making the game harder to those who fail to pay attention, making it a sort of risk and reward sort of deal. You'd want to save money so Jill can pay her bills, but at the same time, you'd want to buy unnecessary crap that she may want in order for her to stay focused to make bartending easier. So there's a trade-off to be had there. The simplicity of the bartending can be tedious, though I'd imagine that to be on purpose as to simulate the actual tedium of Jill's job. But for how simple the gameplay is and how the game tasks you with managing money, the bartending fulfills one important function of telling its story by seamlessly transitioning between the 2 modes of play, the bartending and the story. As a bartender, the characters will casually converse with either you or another character, and this is how the narrative primarily unfolds. It even has multiple endings, but instead of menu-based choices like typical visual novels, the choices in this game are actually done by giving certain characters specific drinks at specific times, which only solidifies the bartending gameplay as a framing device. You can even get multiple endings in a single playthrough if you have the know-how. The setting is a constant as you go through each day of Jill's job, hearing about events that would be important but are irrelevant in her ordinary bartending acumen, catching up on reoccurring characters with their own fleshed out personalities, eccentricities, occupations, and story arcs, whether they're androids or not. At some point, you'll even meet the aforementioned brain in a jar named Taylor, and though the world of Valhalla is said to be a dark and uncertain one, it doesn't fail to have this sense of humor that can go from dark comedy all the way to borderline randomness. This world even has talking dogs! And what better way of showcasing the more lighthearted side of a science fiction world than talking dogs? One of your regular patrons is even an android prostitute named Dorothy, who looks like an innocent little girl but acts like a cheery adult woman who's not shy about talking about herself or what she did on any day in particular, often for the sake of comedic effect, considering what she does. You also get to meet others from different walks of life, like this high hyper over-the-top cam girl who literally streams her daily life to people and offers a premium membership to viewers who want explicit content from her. You even get text scroll across the in-game window that adds to the humor. This J. Jonah Jameson looking dude who loves them big beers is a manly man who can't stop talking about tits and ass, and brings up a pretty damn compelling debate about the purpose of tabloid journalism. This augmented mercenary for hire, who looks kinda like Adam Jedson for some reason, with a code of honor about his occupation and means well, and even this rich woman with the ridiculous curls who avoids a lot of the tropes by being down to earth and caring about her best friend, has a tenacity to give out gifts to children on Mega Christmas because she was born on December 25th, and has goddamn cat ears because why not? Cat ears! It's explained that she needed them as a fetus because her body rejected nanomachines, but still, a Nekomimi in my Cyberpunk Bartending Action game. How fucking awesome. And if you make the right choices, you might just get story content you'll otherwise miss if you didn't notice the social cues during gameplay, and supporting characters will like Jill enough to have her partake in a one-on-one conversation, detailing whatever it is they have in mind, whether to better explain their backstories, get their anxieties off their chest, or to better solidify pre-existing relationships, giving added levels of humanity to each, human or android. Just about every supporting character Jill converses with is bound to have something relevant to their arcs, and even though she isn't the most upbeat person, Jill at least tries to help in some way or another, if not engage in any debates thrown her way. You meet other lesser characters, of course, some of whom have more to them than they let on, but it goes to show how I don't even have to name names when I can simply describe each of the personalities of most characters, not because they're overly simple, but because they left an impact on how I personally saw them as people, characterizing them in ways that matter while serving the world building at large. I don't have to recall that her name is Streaming Chan, or his name is Donovan, or his name is Jamie, or her name is Stella to recall who's who. I've gotten to know them from my hours of play, and with designs that are simple but distinctive enough to pop out, how they look can either reflect who they are or, in the case of Dorothy, subvert player expectations, making them memorable not just in characterization but also in appearance. They even have their own individual preferences for drinks, which are important to learn and remember if you're going for certain character endings. Despite the setting leading you to believe Valhalla's world is this post-dystopian mess, the game uses its bartender lens to instead focus on the more casual side of a cyberpunk world. Jill is even friends with a hacker chick named Alma who complains about her relationship with her eldest sister and her sex life, something that you just wouldn't really know in such a natural fashion unless the character the story is centered on was in such a mundane state of being, like a bartending job. As events unfold, more of Jill's past float to the surface in a way that adds dramatic weight, mainly by explaining why Jill decided to be a bartender in the first place, and by the halfway point, her past catches up with her and reveals the worst possible news Jill could hear, the big twist of the story. This is where it finally starts to hammer in just how aimless Jill truly is up to that point, as well as to contrast the more upbeat and over-the-top elements the plot has presented thus far and connects them together. Jill isn't this super sympathetic character, but neither were nearly everyone associated with her past, exposing not only how selfish Jill had been, but also how selfish those in her past were as well, leading her off the path others wanted her to go, and she ended up hurting them in ways uncalled for just so she can dictate her own life, even if she ended up becoming a bartender instead of a researcher like they wanted her to be. Jill's story is very much about her confronting the past that's come back to bite her, and making amends for the error she's made, presenting her with a test of character where the plot presents ambiguity and emotional stakes on both sides, whether it's Jill or her ex-girlfriend's little sister, Gabby. It makes for some engaging insights as to why she made the decisions she's made that landed her to where she is now, so I'll give it that. This is still very much Jill's story, with all the twists and turns it involves and the dilemmas she faces in regards to her past, and the payoff to this story is satisfying to say the least. However, out of all the story content that's in this visual novel, I'd be lying if I said Jill's story was my favorite aspect. Not because Jill is an uninteresting character or her story arc doesn't have any gripping drama, mind you, but because her story, the viewpoint of which the game is based around, is probably the least exciting and most grounded story of the entire cast, which isn't really a bad thing as it anchors the otherwise fantastical world building and the characters to our level, but it's easy for said world building and characters to overshadow Jill's entire arc. If you were to ask me who my favorite character was, Jill wouldn't be it. She isn't a grim character by any means, and the developers did try to offset her jaded personality by giving her an apologetic side for when the big twist happens that kickstarts her entire character arc, but simply put, she is easily the most restrained character in terms of complexity and the sheer strength of overall characterization. However the effort may have been to balance her character to give a cynic with a heart angle, I actually found myself occasionally siding with those who took offense with their past actions, mainly because of Jill's upbringing being described as being fairly, dare I say the trigger word, privileged. Oh God. Oh God, I can't believe I said that! Having good grades in school, having a violinist for a mother, having a well-paying job lined up for her, as well as a relationship with the one she loved most. Nope! Fuck all that! She'll just be a bartender! After all, she's had no control of her life and stuff. It's saying something about how much effort there was to fleshing out a lot of the other characters when the least engaging character is the main character. Jill is probably the most straightforward to understand out of the entire cast. Her character usually relies on others to pick up the slack. Sure, there are smaller touches like how she loves her cat, hates her real name for a reason that's best left for the player to find out, has a liquor collection, admires Dana, and does care about those she meets in one way or another underneath her jadedness. She and Dana even share one of the best moments of the entire visual novel, where they have a bonding experience where they sit around in Jill's apartment, have some beers, and talk about themselves in an act of genuine friendship. But when you have a supporting cast that are this fun and interesting to know about, whether explored outright in the game itself or mostly implied as to leave players with material to speculate and formulate theories with, the most normal character is gonna be left in the dust. With its anime-inspired art with the retro point-and-click PC game twist, to the presence of its anime influence in the world itself that's nearly pushed to tacky levels, to how some of the humor can border on camp and other things of note like this in-game 4chan-style message board that provides flavor text, it's also apparent that the game is meant to appeal to certain demographics more than others. It's obvious the game, for lack of a better way of putting it, partly aims for the Tumblr crowd and anime fans who talk about waifus, idols, and Japanese video games to hardcore degrees. Because yes, the developers are anime fans and they want to make sure you never forget that at nearly every turn. Not that these are bad things in this case, since the game doesn't go all the way, even if they blatantly wanted some of these characters to be waifu material. Neither is the point of Valhalla, as the game comports itself at each turn, keeps its eye on the ball, and prevents any epic eye rolls, but it's easy to get these vibes while playing. I mean, one of the law enforcement agencies in this game are literally named the White Knights. How subtle. I bring this up because though the game touts itself as being cyberpunk, and it technically is cyberpunk, the game doesn't have the attitude you expect from cyberpunk. The signs of grittiness in its mood, the uneasy, sleazy, tense, and grimy atmosphere of a futuristic world gone to hell, the melancholy of society so technologically advanced that the human experience starts to blur and feel numb, the effects of powers so high up and in control of the world's state that it makes the people question their day-to-day lives. And though sentience is a theme that's brought up here and there, it's obviously not the point of the story. Dorothy's story arc even brings this up when she has an existential crisis, but it's solved relatively quickly and without much difficulty. I don't know about you, but taking into account how Glitch City is described as being this one-sided hellhole of class dissonance, unstable economic pressures, and good old terrorism, I doubt the people of a truly post-dystopian and hopeless cyberpunk setting such as this would be in the mood to use the more politically correct term of sex worker. It checks the stylistic boxes for cyberpunk, but it doesn't necessarily have the feel, regardless of whether or not your focus is on a mere bartender. Again, this isn't really a bad thing, and indeed, the game and its writing has the benefits that can come from having an expressive, dramatic, and occasionally silly tone to it that being entirely grim might not provide. I came to grow fond of these characters the more I saw them, whether learning about Dorothy's real name, or Alma's messy relationship with her older sister, or Stella and Cez's friendship, or the fact that Donovan doesn't give a shit about his wife cheating on him, and is often curious about android breasts. Because he's a manly man, you know? Hey, they even make a reference to Christine Love, which is pretty cool to me. I'm a fan of her work. I love Analog A Hate Story. Oh, and did I mention that the soundtrack is goddamn amazing? Because the soundtrack can be incredible, danceable, funky fun, with my favorite track being Dawn Approaches. have left a link to the soundtrack in the description. I highly recommend it. Being a cyberpunk bartender has never felt so good to hear. It makes the tedium of mixing drinks feel all the more tolerable. Seriously, get this soundtrack. It's great! It fits the retro PC game style. It has variety. The tunes gave me the feeling of wanting to get off my chair and dance. Just get it if you can. I've spent over 30 hours on Valhalla in total, with the average playthrough clocking in at about 8 to 10 hours depending on how many breaks you take. And once you go through it once, it has a new game plus mode that allows you to keep your remaining money so you can go ahead and get any endings you've missed. This is one visual novel that uses its gameplay concept in a way best suited for the story, and in turn, the story comes back around to benefit the gameplay. The writing is strong, the game style is well realized with a shockingly addicting soundtrack to mix drinks to, and boy did I get to know these characters as I took their order, made them a drink with fake alcohol, and read what they had to say next. I doubt I'll get to play many games this year. I probably won't be able to play Overwatch or the new Mirror's Edge or what have you, and I'm starting to doubt that I'll get to play Mankind Divided. But if I'm going to be playing only a few games this year, I'm glad one of them gave me some of the best cyberpunk bartending I've ever experienced. If you'd like a cyberpunk story with some fun multifaceted characters with an anime twist, this visual novel might just be for you. I'm glad to have played this one. I asked for some compelling cyberpunk bartending action, and I got that, and much more.